The first LEGO Star Trek set ever has finally been revealed. This is a day I hope many other Star Trek fans have been waiting for. And with the Enterprise D marks hopefully a new era for Star Trek and a new era for LEGO. That being said, there is quite a few starships and enemy ships I'm sure we would all like to see in LEGO form. I myself am not least among them. So today I have put together a top 10 list of Star Trek ships that we need in LEGO form, and just all around have a bit of a good time speculating about the future of LEGO Star Trek. So what is up, you guys?
Misa back!
Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Will, and if you enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like, hitting that notification bell, subscribing, and sharing this video out there. Now, before we get started, I just want to clarify, this is my opinion, this is my list. You could have very different ideas of what Star Trek ships need to be made into LEGO form. And honestly, I want to hear your opinions. So once again, let me down in the comments section what Star Trek ships you want to see in LEGO form in the future. I will be focusing on more classic Trek, not anything post-Enterprise. So keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 10, the Borg Cube. Now, I'll admit this will be the most random and kind of a little bit of a boring build, as the Borg Cube is, well, just a cube, but this cybernetic race that assimilates anything in its path, and a great enemy to the Federation, it would kind of be a crime not to include them in a set in the future. At the end of the day, even though the Borg Cube wouldn't be the most inspiring build, if LEGO adds in a couple light bricks, it would honestly be really cool to see the green light shining outside from inside the cube's interior. I just think there's a lot of interesting possibilities, and more importantly, a Borg Cube would be a good fit for you to include a pretty decent sized interior too. So there's something there. The exterior might be pretty boring, but the interior would be pretty interesting. Number 9, the USS Excelsior. So this one's a bit more of a deep cut for some people, but this is Captain Sulu's ship from a couple of the more original Star Trek films. And it is a very unique designed starship. I for one think this set would be a great way to get a few classic characters in the maroon uniforms, which is a pretty iconic uniform from the films. While this is one I deem having a less likely chance of getting made, I still would really love to see this ship in LEGO form one day, as I think it is very iconic when compared to, well, the Enterprise and other classic Star Trek ships as well. As a bonus, the Enterprise B was an Excelsior-class ship. So if LEGO ever decided they wanted to include every single Enterprise, an Excelsior-class ship would need to be made. Number 8, the USS Reliant. This is one I felt was an absolute must. Han, for those of you who don't know, is a very iconic Star Trek villain, and he ends up stealing a starship at some point, and that ship is the USS Reliant. And I think this ship would be the perfect way to get a Khan minifigure, some of his crew and people. And as a bonus, the USS Reliant is a very uniquely designed starship as well. It would definitely be a decent departure from the saucer sections of most starships and then their hulls and the engines swept back. That being said, I just hope Khan makes it into a set one day. Number 7, the USS Enterprise E. Now, this is one I definitely want made down the road, but for those of you who don't know, the Enterprise E is the one that comes after the Enterprise D, the set we are getting currently. And it is crewed by Captain Picard and his crew. So even though we got many figures of them already, I would love to see them once again redone down the road. You know, once the Enterprise D set retires, I feel like they should release the Enterprise E with the minifigures a bit changed. But the Enterprise E is such a beautiful ship. If I recall, it's it's a Sovereign class ship. It's one of the longest starships in Federation history. And of course, one I personally hope gets made one day. Number 6, the Romulan Warbird. This list would not be complete without the Romulans. They are probably they're in a way the anti-Federation. They're a big empire who are occasionally rivaling or even enemies of the Federation. and their ships are very iconic. I mean, just look at this thing and tell me this wouldn't be a cool looking Lego set. Now, I'll admit the Romulan Warbird would definitely not be the next set I would choose to get made. We'll get to that in a moment. But I really do hope down the road we get some more ships that aren't Federation-based. Just due to the fact that there's so many other iconic ships out there that aren't just the Enterprise. Like the next one on our list. Number 5, the Klingon Bird of Prey. The Klingon Bird of Prey is such an amazing design for a ship. For those of you who don't know, the wings here on the side raise up because the ship is actually capable of landing on the surface of a planet, something not many Star Trek ships can do. Then, of course, in its attack configuration, the ship has a cloaking device, which is not something you can really translate well to a Lego set, but still, the Klingons are probably one of the most well-known species outside of Vulcans for Star Trek. And I do think it'd be a crime if we never got a Bird of Prey as a Lego set. Plus, for Star Trek The Voyage Home, the 5th Star Trek movie, a Bird of Prey is actually the main ship the heroes use throughout the film, instead of an Enterprise. Once again, cementing its spot as a must-have for a Lego Star Trek set, at least in my books. Number 4, the NX-01 Enterprise. Alright. These final slots on the list are sets that, in my opinion, are must-haves to be made down the road as Lego sets. The Star Trek show called Enterprise is a bit of a unique case. It wasn't as widely regarded in the fan base, but it was essentially an origin story for the Federation, taking place before the original series, showing humanity's first steps out into space. And in my opinion, it's a very interesting and fun show to watch. It's one of my personal favorites, at least. And the NX-01, in my opinion, is a definite set that needs to be made. We can get the entirety of Captain Archer's crew. As a bonus, the ship just looks really sleek. It's a much flatter design, being a much older starship. But I also think that would make it much easier for the designers to design, considering the fact that how difficult it must be to have designed the Enterprise D, for example, and make it stable. Well, the NX-01 is pretty stable already. Of course, the only problem they would have to figure out is the engine strutting out of the sides, but other than that, I think it would be a pretty decent set to display next to all the others. Number 3, the USS Voyager. As you can tell, we're getting to all the hero ships, but they are all necessities in my book. This show was about Voyager, this ship here, getting caught and pushed hundreds upon hundreds of light years away from home. That's easily 75 or so plus years away. And along the way, they had no one else to rely on but themselves and had to survive through the territories of multiple alien species. And it was this ship that got them through a lot of it. Voyager is a very unique design for a starship. It takes what you would expect from a starship and pushes it a little bit. One interesting fact that I hope the Lego set has is the 2 engines, when it's about to go to warp, raise up a little bit to create more of a V shape. Something I personally hope will happen. Of course, the set would include Captain Janeway and her entire crew. And I have this idea of maybe for gifts with purchases for all these ships, we can start getting shuttlecraft gift with purchases, like the one we just got for the Enterprise D. So for this one, we could get a Delta Flyer gift with purchase, which is basically a fancy shuttlecraft that the crew themselves had to design to help survive the dangers of the Delta Quadrant that they were stranded in. Once again, just a theory and hope, but we'll see what the future holds. Number 2, Deep Space Nine. Okay, so I'm kind of pushing the boundaries on this one since this is top 10 Star Trek ships we need, but Deep Space Nine is iconic. And if LEGO doesn't want to do Deep Space Nine, they could always use the USS Defiant up here, which is the main ship they used. But the show is about a space station that is stationed, no pun intended, in front of a wormhole that allows the Federation to explore further reaches of space, making it a very important and iconic location in the Star Trek universe. Lots of ships can dock at it, and it has its own interior city, basically filled with shops, quarters, and places for our main cast of the Deep Space Nine show to live. And I feel like this would be a really incredible set that could be made for $1,000, which, you know, is kind of probably going to be a bit of a controversial opinion, considering how well the Death Star has been taken with the LEGO community. But if there's any Star Trek set that should cost $1,000, it would be Deep Space Nine. That being said, if LEGO does not want to go the space station route, the USS Defiant is another iconic starship that can definitely sell well as a LEGO set, at least in my book. Number 1, the NCC-170 USS Enterprise. This, of course, is the original series Enterprise, and it is the most iconic Enterprise out there. The only reason I think this set was not chosen before the Enterprise D is because 2026 is actually the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, and what better way to celebrate the 60th anniversary than release the original starship that started it all? So my personal belief is that this set is not only a shoo-in, but is going to happen in 2026. I mean, LEGO now has the rights to make Star Trek sets. Seems only fair that we get more than just one, and the original Enterprise should be the one they do. Of course, we'll get Captain Kirk and his whole crew, and maybe for a gift of purchase, an original series shuttle pod like the Galileo, which is a pretty iconic shuttlecraft for Star Trek. As the top 10 Star Trek ships I personally think LEGO should make into LEGO sets one day. I'm really curious what you all think, and please let me know down in the comments section what you all think. There are a lot of other options, like for example, this little runabout down here in the bottom right corner could be a Deep Space Nine gift with purchase. And there are other iconic villain ships like Ferengi ships, and Cardassians, and Dominion ships even, from the more evil side, that would be really interesting to see as LEGO sets. And once again, I throw it off to you. What do you think? What ships do you want to see? Let me know down in the comments section. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, hitting that notification bell, subscribing, and sharing this video out there. I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.